CAD source data often changes during the lifetime of a product. Parts may be added or removed from the assembly, or important product information is added to a part. In order to apply these changes downstream to the visualization assets, the time-consuming process of data prepping must be repeated to keep the visualization data up to date. This data prepping process typically includes removing parts not relevant for the visualization, managing the hierarchy by moving parts or combining parts, configuring the geometry tessellation on a per-part level, correcting the shading on the geometry, or setting up the materials. All of these steps require manual interaction with the source data and make change management a non-trivial process. With InstaLOD, this is about to change. The novel Scene Rules engine enables us to automate the entire process. These scene rules are stored in an InstaLOD profile and can be automatically applied whenever data is loaded, or used in the same way when processing batches using InstaLOD pipeline. InstaLOD's Scene Rule engine makes it trivial to automatically regenerate visualization assets whenever the source data changes. If you haven't watched our CAD workflow video already, definitely check that out before we dive into the more advanced Scene Rules engine, as the CAD Live link makes up an equally crucial part of the CAD workflow. So inside of InstaLOD Studio, we can see that we've imported a car rim, and it's got the default tessellation on here. So let's go ahead and set up this part using the rules engine so that this gets tessellated and some materials get assigned automatically when going ahead and batch processing this. On the right-hand side, we've got our scene import rules, and I'm going to go ahead and add an entry. I will call this one tessellate, and I'll go ahead and hit enter. So inside of our rules, we can see we've got a handful of different settings. First of all, we have the description, and then I can also set an attribute. And in this case, I'm going to set this to name. And now I can set my match regex. So for my specific scenario, I want to match everything with the name body so that both of my inner and outer parts get tessellated. So in this case, I'll go ahead and type in body and then .star. Then we have our priority, and depending on how high we have it, it'll get listed inside of the rules. Dependently, the higher the rule, the earlier it will get processed. So for now, I'm going to set this to 100. Now inside of the predicate, I can decide what exactly should happen. With the predicate delete, we're able to remove parts. With set attributes, we can write attributes into the metadata of our parts. Then we can also combine meshes. And with the predicate move, we're not just able to move parts into new folders, but actually rename parts as well. Then with material assignment, we can change materials, use previous materials from our scenes, or swap materials out. We can also set up entirely new materials as well. Then if we scroll to the bottom with the tessellation predicate, we can set our tessellation settings and our shading. And we can go as far as writing our own predicates through a C++ SDK. So you can go ahead and write your own plugins to create your own custom rules. In this case, I want to tessellate, and you can see I automatically get my tessellation settings. So in this case, I want to set the maximum deviation to 0.01, and on the maximum edge length, I want to set it to 1. I'm also going to go down to my shading magic and set this to normal. Now, if you're having trouble understanding these settings, I highly recommend that you watch our previous video called From PLM to VR, in which we cover all of these settings in detail. So what I can do now is I can go ahead and preview this. And at the bottom, we can see that there are two parts that match the criteria for this scene rule, body.2 and body.3, which are my outer and inner parts. So this worked beautifully. And if I want to, I can also go ahead and process this straight away. And there we go. We can see we've already tessellated our assets. So the next thing that I want to do is assign some materials. So to do that, I'll go ahead and add another entry. And in this case, I want to add a gold material. And I want this center part to be gold, so I can right-click on the object here and choose Copy Name, then go to my Match Regex and simply paste it in. In this case, I'm going to set my priority to 60, and we can see that this lists correctly. For the predicate, I'll set this to Material Assignment, and I can now go ahead and rename my new material to Gold Material. You'll also notice that I set the attribute to name because again, we're going to match by the name of the object. And now I'll set up the material. So for the base color, I'll give it a nice golden orange, then slightly lower the roughness and increase the metalness all the way. So now I actually want to create a second material for the outer rim. So to do that, I'm just going to duplicate it so that I don't have to set up the entire material again. And this time it's going to be a black material. And then inside here, I'm going to change the match regex to body.2 so that it matches the outer rim, and to give it a priority of 50. With that done, I'm also going to rename the material and adjust its properties. So I'll go ahead and make this black, bring that roughness all the way down and the metalness as well. So instead of previewing or processing these new rules, I want to go ahead and apply them by simply dragging and dropping my asset into the viewport. So here I'm going to open the scene. And there we have a pop-up asking us, do we want to use these rules that we have? In this case, yes. And there we go. On import, all of our rules have been applied, and we can see that this worked beautifully. We've got our tessellation and our material assignment. So next up, I want to go ahead and add another rule. And in this case, I'm going to go and add an entry, and what I want to do is a move. And for my move, what I want to do is grab my inner and outer rim, and first of all, put them into a new folder, but then also rename them. So I'll set the attribute to name, and then let's first start off with the inner rim. So I'll rename the rule to move inner, and then I'll copy and paste the name. So right click, copy name, paste it into the match regex. I'll set my priority to 40, and we can see the predicate is already on move, so that's good to go. So to create a folder, I'll first type the name of the folder, then use a separator. So the folder is called rim, and then after the separator, I'll add the name of the object, which is inner. Then I'll go ahead and duplicate this, and I'll call this move outer. Then I'll go ahead and set the priority to 30, and change the regex to body.2 to match the outer part's name. And so I'll go ahead and rename the part so that it goes in the rim directory, and it's called outer. And so with this done, I'm now going to go ahead and process this. And now on the left in our outliner, we can see that we have our inner and outer parts inside of a rim folder. Now we'll also notice in the outliner that I've got one folder with one part left. And this is actually junk. If I go ahead and hide the rest of this, we can see that there's this last part here that I need to remove. So I'm going to add another entry, and I'll call this remove junk. And with that done, again, I'm going to set my attribute to name. And for the match regex, this time I'm going to copy the name of the folder. And also I can use another separator here to tell InstaLOD that we want to target two pieces specifically. So I have a separator, and then I type in offset.1. And then for the predicate, you can see we have a lot of different options here, but in this case, let's use delete to just remove those objects. So again, I'm going to go ahead and import the original CATIA file and choose to open in new scene. And yes, I want to use those scene rules. So I'll go ahead and import. And there we go. On import, all of our scene rules are being applied, and we're left with our high-res asset tessellated with materials assigned. And we've also moved the objects that we need into their own folder, and we've also removed all the extra unnecessary junk. So what I can do now is go ahead and create some mesh operation settings, and then let this process in the background through InstaLOD pipeline without having to do any manual work. With this next assembly, we want to go ahead and clean up the scene by regrouping and renaming most of the parts. So first of all, we can see that the normals of these rotors are actually flipped, so I want to make sure that we flip those. Then if we look in the outliner on the left, you can see that we have a bunch of parts called part body, and so things aren't very well organized here. So I want to do some combining and regrouping. So inside of our scene rules, the first thing I want to do is create an entry, and I want to call this flip rotors. So for my flip rotors rule, I actually want to use the predicate tessellate. And the reason for that is because inside of there, we have an option to invert normals. So what I'll do is I'll change my attribute to match by name. Then for the match regex, I'll get my rotors. And in this case, they're all named the same due to the fact that they're instanced in the CAD file. And InstaLOD is able to recognize this and keep the naming convention the same throughout the instances. So I've got my two rotor sides here. I'll just copy these names and paste them in. And I'll go ahead and get the other one. and just paste it in here as well. I'll go ahead and set the priority to 10 in this case. And there we go. So my predicate, again, I have it set to tessellate. And then for the settings, I'll keep everything on default apart from invert normals. So with that done, I'll just click process. And there we go. So the next thing I want to do is group those parts that belong to the body of the assembly and move them into a new folder. So for that, I'll just quickly copy the name of this part here, create a new entry. I'll call it group body. Then for the attribute, I'll set it to name. And for the match regex, I'll just place it in here. For the priority, I'll set it to 8. And I'll make sure to keep the predicate on move. For the path, I'll create a new folder called body parts. And then I will add another separator. And for the name of the object, I'll use part. And I think I also want to include the rotors in this folder as well. So in this case, the rotors are all named the same, which is really useful. So I'll just copy one name and add this to my match regex, again by using a separator. So for the path at the end, I've used the word part. And so if we have multiple parts, InstaLOD will automatically rename that part to part 1, part 2, and so on. So if I process this, we can see we have a new folder called body parts, and we have, again, part 1, part 2, part 3, and it's all organized for us. So the next thing that I want to do is combine all of the rotors, because we can see they're all separated into different subgroups and everything is kind of messy. So I'm going to combine everything and move it into a new folder. So to do that, I'll go back to the rules and add an entry, and I'm going to call this combine rotors, and then I'll set my attribute to name, and then for the match regex, I'll just grab the entire folder. I'll copy that name and paste it in, and I'll go ahead and set the priority to 7. Then for the predicate, I want to combine meshes. And I'm going to create a folder called final. And then I want to rename my combined meshes to rotors. So with that done, I'll click process. And there we go. We have one folder with the body parts and one folder called final with my rotors. Finally, I want to do a combine of all of those body part meshes and also move them into the final folder. So to do that, I'll go to my combined rotors and just duplicate this because we've already got a few things set up for us. So I'll rename this to combine body, then I'll change my match regex to body parts, and I'll lower the priority to 6. So you can see the predicate is set to combine meshes. So for the path, I'll just change it to final and then body parts. So with that done, I'll go ahead and click process. And there we have it. We have one folder called final with the rotors and the body parts both inside. Okay, so now what I want to do is change the materials. In this case, I want the black and white paint to change to this red plastic. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to again create a new entry, and I'll call this switch material white. Then for the attribute that I want to match with, I'll choose name. And then for the regex, I'll grab everything in the scene. So I can accomplish this by using the .star syntax. So what I'd like to do is assign a material. So for the predicate, I'll select material assignment. For the previous material name, I'll use the name of the white material. And the new material name that I'd like to apply instead is the red material. And that material is already in our scene, so we don't need to create a new one. And InstaLOD will automatically apply the red material if it matches the name of one that already exists. So let's go ahead and do this. Inside of the material editor, I'm going to find the white material. And there it is, solid with the F. I'm going to go ahead and copy the name, and then we'll paste it inside of the previous material name. Then I'll find my red material, and that's this one. I'll go ahead and copy it, and then I'll paste it into the new material name. Okay, so now that we've got this set up, I'm going to go ahead and process this. And there we go. We can see that we have already swapped out the white material with the red one. Now I want to go ahead and do the same for the black part in the center. So again, I'll add an entry and call it switch material black. And then for the attribute, again, I'll match by name. And for the match regex, I'm going to choose everything in the scene again. So use the .star notation. And then I'll set my predicate to material assignment. And then let's see, we'll go ahead and find the black material and copy that. That's going to be the previous material name. And then I'll go ahead and find that red material again, And I'll put it in the new material name. So again, we're locating the previous material, which is the black material, and we're replacing it with the red material, which again is already in the scene. So with that, I'll go ahead and process this. And there we go. We've now finished setting up the materials. Now there's one final step that I want to do, which is apply an attribute. And this can be really useful because you can also use these attributes that we set up inside of our settings to then either do tessellation, set materials, or for example, you can use your own predicates that you can set up through the SDK. So you can end up writing your own plugins and rules, and this can really become quite a complex system if you want it to. So to create a custom attribute, I'll add an entry and I'll call this set attribute. Then for the rules attribute, I'll have it match by name. And then I'll apply this attribute to everything in the scene, so I'll use that .* notation again. Then for the predicate, I'll use set attribute. And for the attribute that I'd like to add, I'll go ahead and create one called company. And then for the value, I'll use InstaLOD. Okay, so I'll go ahead and process this. All right, so now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and export this scene and bring it into Maya. Okay, so here we are inside of Maya, and we've got the quadcopter imported. Now, if I go into my attribute editor and select the quadcopter, I'm just going to move over, and here at the bottom, we've got this area for attributes, which now shows company and InstaLOD. So here we can see the brilliance of the scene import rules, with which you can not only build your central data source for visualization, but can dive right into the metadata and apply complex business logic for applications and use cases when needed. I hope this video was helpful to you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. If you enjoyed this video, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. For the latest news about InstaLOD, please visit our website and follow us on Twitter. You can find all the links in the video description below. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.